All right, welcome back to the beautiful Pacific Northwest. This is David, and real quick, I want to give a little shout out. I don't get paid for any of these. This is just time for me right before the encounter stories to kind of raise awareness for other folks out there around this big world of Bigfoot. First off, to sassysquatch.com, sassysquatch.com. If you guys want really cool stickers, the kind where my wife says, "Hey, no more Bigfoot stickers on the car." I have to tell you, go to sassysquatch.com. You'll absolutely love it. They've got some great Bigfoot stickers there, and I really like the one. I went ahead and grabbed that one with Bigfoot's kind of like peering out with his hand over his brow there, and you can put this one in the back window of your car. It would be awesome. So there you go. There is that. Also, real quick, I want to share out a good friend of mine who is starting up his own, I guess you would say, some more awesome based on true encounter stories from around the country, actually, not just the Pacific Northwest, but BigfootsWilderness.com. BigfootsWilderness.com. You can find Bigfoot's Wilderness, that's with an S, plural, Bigfoot's Wilderness on YouTube, and you guys can give that a test out. He's actually got his own story that he's starting off with, and his own encounter as a kid. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoy that. You can find that basically every Saturday morning on YouTube. So there you go. Um, so real quick, congratulations, Mike. Can't wait to see you out here. Can't wait to see Bigfoot's Wilderness and get in there. And don't forget, guys, if you want some cool stickers, sassysquatch.com. Let's get in here. And what we are going to do is we're going to get into this week's PacWest Bigfoot encounter story, Natural Bridges. In a clan of Bigfoot, man encounters multiple Bigfoot in Washington state. We have our own natural bridges in the state of Washington, and just so you know, Bigfoot hang out there, and I mean a clan of them. Other than being in a car accident not a year later, watching multiple Bigfoot walking by in their own weird way and observing them for at least a couple minutes was a pretty crazy moment in my life. Here is what happened, what I saw, and please keep my last name out of it. I'm still in service of the government and do not want to risk my job or retirement. Thanks, Dave. Of natural bridges in Bigfoot. It was 1997 that I would know for sure because later that summer, well, late summer, beginning of fall, I would be in a pretty serious car accident. But I saw them. I came across a clan or family of Bigfoot as they passed by me before that fateful day. It was the tail end of winter when I decided to head up and out to the natural bridges and ice caves. And yes, there was some ice, you could say, hanging off the tops of the caves. It was real cold that winter, I remember. Anyway, to get on with it, I decided to take a hike out that way, as I love to get out into into nature and all. Personally, I'm a bit of a naturalist, love being out in nature, and in all the years out there, I've heard some strange things, but never did I expect to see this, or them, ever. But here's exactly what I saw, and what has captured my imagination to this day. And to be honest, I read and listen to everything I can get my hands on, and get my mouse to click on when it comes to the subject of Bigfoot ever since that day. That's how I found you, Dave. Wilderness Walk. I called them my wilderness walk, personally. This would be some hiking around the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest almost every weekend, and during the summer, you could find me camping almost every weekend and getting some fishing in as well. I have never been much of a hunter, not that I do not eat venison and the likes, but fishing was about as far as I went with any hunting that I would do. I did like to harvest berries as often as possible, and gathering mushrooms was fun as well here and there. But for the most part, I just loved being out in the woods and all. It was my home away from home. Come to find out, though, it was a home for something else, something most amazing, thrilling, and even a bit scary. Not that I feel that way towards them, but the sheer size of these things screams monster. so I can see why people are freaked out when they see them. This particular weekend, I was going to head out to my favorite little spot, the Natural Bridge area. Some of you might know the place. It is thick woods up there, and even though the trails are wide enough, you could get lost if you can get lost quickly if you venture too far off of them. Especially that time of year when the snow was on the ground. But even though it was cold, the sun was out for a few days prior, and some of the snow was patchy at best along the trail. This made it easier to hike into the bridges, and I did not need my snowshoes. I had left the house that morning pretty early. It takes about an hour or so to get there from where I lived at the time. I would say more like an hour and a half. But time flies when you're traveling to a place you love, and it felt like a short trip when I arrived. I got my pack together, jacket on, heavy waterproof boots, and started off. I have to say, there were a couple, two or three times over the years where I had heard some pretty crazy stuff out in this particular forest. One was not far from where I was that morning. I remember hearing some howling like sounds off in the distance right before sunset during a summer about 4 to 5 years before this event in my life. The other times, the other times were similar. It sounded like howls and even some of the whooping to go with it. Those events happened when I was camping up around St. Helen, of course, and that was before the eruption. So, yes, I would put that around 1977, 78. But never once did I attribute them to Bigfoot. But then again, I cannot really attribute them to anything else at the time, I recall. It was just weird sounds in the forest, and that was all. But there I was on my wilderness walk into the natural bridges, and all the while not knowing that fate would step in for the first time that year. The second, well, you know about that now. Nothing but trees and. It was nothing but trees and a light wind, making creaking sounds like they do. But I swore for a second I heard something else, like a deep but harmonic almost sound floating in the air. A moan? A howl? Just my imagination. Well, like a great Temptation song, I gave it up to my imagination and or just the sounds that could be coming from the caves and the wind that I was nearing at that point. I'd finally reached my destination and decided to walk on past a ways because, as I said, I love being out in the woods. And to be honest, I never went too far past the natural bridge and caves before. Don't know why, just never did. And this time I decided to keep on going about 400 or 500 yards past them. Just wanted to look around. I did not hear anything else weird, just the wind. But as the clouds started to accumulate and it became overcast, I got an ominous sense of something. Not sure what that something was at that moment, but for some reason I just felt, well, uncomfortable. Maybe there was a wild animal out and about where I was at the moment. A bear, a mountain lion, had noticed me perhaps. Either way, I headed back to familiar grounds, the natural bridges and caves. As I walked back down the trail, I still had a weird sense that something was around. But all I could hear was the wind blowing through the trees still, and me walking along the trail. Whoop and grunt. I felt a bit better after being back on familiar ground. I decided I was going to look around and see if there were any telltale signs of more dangerous animals around, like wolf, which there were and are today around, contrary to what some would say. I know this for a fact. I did find some cougar tracks, so I gave up the weirdness to that. Apparently there was a cougar about and the tracks looked rather fresh, maybe a day old or less. But as I was thinking to myself that I was just fine and that the world was suddenly made right again, I heard something that was not my imagination running wild. It was a strange whoop like sound from the opposite side of the main trail and bridge. I had heard something like it, as I stated before, but never this clear and close. I had been back at the bridges area for just over a half an hour by that point when I heard a crisp, clear, and even sharp whoop come from the opposite side of the trail and bridge. I stood still, not knowing if it was a person making weird sounds or a big cat stalking me and now making some crazy sounds and noises of its own as it closed in on me. One thing I knew for sure, though, I was getting pretty nervous all of a sudden. I decided to jump down into the little ravine that the natural bridge covered. I was not going to take off just yet. If it were a mountain lion, well, I could scare it off for sure. Besides, I wanted to see this thing. It's not often you see them, even though they're always around up there. But curiosity, I thought, it would kill this cat, and I mean not minutes later, me. There was another whoop like sound, as crisp and clear as the last, and even closer this time. I was guessing whatever it was had to be about 40 to 50 yards away by that point, maybe even closer. Well, it was closer actually. The next thing I heard was a grunt. Yeah, a grunt. It is not every day you hear something like that, a guttural and raspy grunt that was loud enough to echo through the trees. This had made me a bit freaked out and wondering what in the world was heading my way by that point. I ducked down and hid under the bridge a bit at that moment, just behind some small shrubbery and rocks. I could see up and out a bit, and boy, did I see something. A clan of Squatch. Its footsteps were really heavy. I heard them first before I finally realized what they belonged to. A Bigfoot. A real life, massive, muscular, ape-like looking Bigfoot. It was dark brown in color, almost black, like burnt coffee beans or something like that. The hair was long, but it was not as wavy and blustering around like some reports I have seen or the encounter stories I've heard even here, Dave. But it was long, and it did move a bit when the wind really picked up, however. Its face I could see clearly as day, too. It was ape-like, in fact. It had a very deep brow line, sunken dark eyes that were more like ours, but dark, dark, almost black to be honest. It had no neck to speak of. It was as if like the head was sunk in on top of a chest or something. But I can tell you they are not all like that, especially when they are young at least. It stood there next to the tree, not 20 yards from me, just staring down and over at the trail as if it was doing some reconnaissance or something. Soon enough, it swung its large arms out and started taking some of the largest strides I'd ever seen and moved just past me, but up above the embankment, of course. Next thing I knew, there it was again, the weird grunt, rap, and that is when I heard more movement from above and behind me. They moved like apparitions as they came out of the trees and skirted the top of the ravine, one right after the other. There was, at least by my count, at the time of what I could see and hear, was about 5 of them passing through. They all seemed to be about the same color, and one had breasts, a female, I suppose. And while the first one seemed to have some pretty heavy footsteps, these others you could hear, they seemed, at least to me, to be somewhat treading lightly in a way. I could barely hear them. I kept peeking out from behind the shrub and the rocks here and there and watching them as they slowly, but almost mystically, moved by. Eventually, I had spotted something not many people ever see, never mind a Bigfoot itself, but I saw a young one, barely 2 feet tall, I would guess. It was pure black, and its hair had a real sheen to it, even under the now dark clouds that had moved in. It also moved on all fours, up until it seemed to cling on to its mother's leg all of a sudden as she walked. And on a side note, I did have a did it did have a kind of or a bit of a neck, I noticed. Maybe it is just something they outgrow, or maybe some have and keep a bit of a neck and others do not. Who knows though? But I did notice one. I was getting a bit freaked out as the last two seemed to almost meander a moment. I thought maybe they sensed I was there or smelled me, but after a moment or two, they moved on as well. I do wish I would have seen more than I did, but most of the time I was hiding and just listening. The passerby. Everything happened so fast, but from where I hid, it seemed to last forever. I was frightened for sure, even to the point of shaking and trembling a bit, but I stayed quiet and only peeked out when I needed to. I could still hear them moving through the woods. At least I could hear the grunts and as the last two moved off, and there were a couple of whooping sounds to follow them. Whoop, whoop. I was frozen stiff with fear for at least another 3 to 4 minutes before I finally peered out again to see if there was any more movement. None. Finally, everything was as quiet and still as it was before they came passing by. I slowly stepped out from underneath the natural bridge I was huddled under and looked around me one more time. I knew that they headed off in the opposite direction of the trailhead, so I got started down it, and fast. I had some time to think along the way about the passers-by that I'd seen and heard. Who is the real passer-by out here in the wilds of the vast North American forest, us or them? If we were all honest with ourselves, the answer would be simple. Both them and us. In the end, we are all part of this world. Mankind and what I have come to believe to be a great ape of North America. I am still in awe today of what brief visuals I had, but like I said, I wish I could have seen more of them. But then again, what if they would have spotted me? What kind of trouble could I have truly ended up in? Maybe, just maybe out of pure survival instincts, they could have killed me. I shudder to think about that possibility today, but I'm still here, still in awe of that event in my life. Back to nature. I've been back several times since, and always for one reason now: Bigfoot. I don't care who you are, but trust me when I say if you have had an encounter and you do not wish to have another. I get it. While they are marvelous and amazing to see, they're also quite scary to look at, massive in size. I cannot imagine what might have happened if they'd spotted me, like I said. But as for myself, I do want to see them, or just one of them again. Just one more time at least. But that is my encounter story. And if you are there ever and see a guy in a blue bandana and a grayish goatee wandering around out there, well, I am that guy, and it's okay to say hello. So thanks. That is my story. RJ.